Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out this blue, black and green or Sultai colored control deck, which eventually plans to mill the opponent out by destroying all their creatures and milling half their deck with Singularity Rupture, and then at some point following it up with a River Churn Monument, which we can immediately exhaust to mill the remaining half of the opponent's library. But I wouldn't necessarily call this a mill deck, since we are mostly just trying to control the board, and at some point this just happens to be the most convenient win condition that we can slot into the deck, but we're not going to run any dedicated mill cards. So the deck starts out with the idea of building around shared roots, actually, since this can ramp us in the Sultai colors, so that's the main advantage over a Jeskai control deck, which also has some pretty strong cards. But in green we finally get to ramp, and not only get a forest, which we could already do before, but now also get swamps and islands to fix our colors. So this is really the starting point of this deck, and then with shared roots we can hopefully also cast some of our more expensive spells in a timely fashion, when they may otherwise be a little too slow. And then another card I really wanted to include is Cease and Desist, as we can use both halves pretty reliably in Standard. The Cease half just kind of a cantrip, exiling up to 2 cards, gaining 2 and drawing a card, but exiling 2 cards can potentially be a lifesaver if you're up against a Kevero combo decks. It can also slow down the Lesson decks by a little bit, as we can exile some Lessons out of their graveyard, so it does have its applications. But we're also interested in the Desist half, 4 and double green in this case, to destroy all artifacts and enchantments. And we don't have any artifacts and enchantments ourselves that we're going to blow up with it, since we're always going to wait to play the monument until we can immediately exhaust it for the most part. So this can also be very effective against blue-red Lessons decks, blowing up their Artist Talents and Monument to Endurance, and it's also a lifesaver against Synthesizer artifact decks, as we can essentially blow up their entire board. So it does have a lot of applications. And then another card I wanted to include, of course, is Deadly Cover-Up, as a cheaper board wipe that we can cast before Singularity Rupture, potentially even on turn 4, thanks to Shared Roots and our other ramp cards. And we can also collect evidence to potentially exile a key card out of the opponent's library, so that can also be a way to exile Kevero out of the Kevero Reanimator decks. And we're also pretty good at setting up the collect evidence in the first place, thanks to Cease and Desist counting as an 8 mana card when it's in the graveyard, so exiling 1 copy is enough to satisfy the Deadly Cover-Up Collect Evidence 6. And we're also playing the full set of Rakshasa's Bargain, which counts as a 6 mana card when it's in the graveyard, but we can of course just cast it for 3 mana, 1 of each color, to look at the top 4 cards of our library, putting 2 in hand and the rest in the graveyard. So a nice card advantage spell that complements Stock Up nicely. This one a sorcery speed card draw effect, digging a little bit deeper than the Bargain, not putting anything in the graveyard either. And then rounding out the deck, we need some more removal. 2 copies of Duress as a way to maybe check for opposing counter spells, which are the main threats when we're not having to deal with opposing creatures. And then at 2 mana, we have some instant speed spot removal with Shoot the Sheriff. Heartless Act is also an option, but of course with Ouroboros being a popular creature, they might have some +1 counters on them already, so then Heartless Act is not quite as effective. And then I also have the one of Terminus of Return. Not that I plan to return any creatures with it, it's just another 2 mana ramp option to complement Shared Roots, and it's indestructible, so it's not going to get destroyed by my own Desist, so that's also important. And then we also have 2 copies of Maelstrom Pulse as another sorcery speed but versatile removal spell that can potentially deal with multiple permanents that share the same name, so it can be effective against all the 4-off standard decks that might run out multiple copies of the same creature, and it's also very good against the Synthesizer decks, since those often have multiple ways to tutor up additional copies, so now we can deal with all of them at once. And then finally we also have a one-off Urgent Necropsy as an instant speed removal spell that also takes advantage of the collect evidence mechanic to potentially deal with multiple permanents at once, so also very synergistic with Rakshasa's Bargain and Cease Desist. Could even be convinced to play a second copy, but this can also deal with creatures, artifacts, enchantments, and even planeswalkers all at once, assuming we have enough cards in our graveyard. And then 3 copies of Rupture, so we're hoping to cast this one before we eventually mill the opponent out. And then the mana base has a few utility lands as well, with Agna Kella, a way to draw and discard if we're maybe flooding out or need to find a specific answer. And then Mistrise Village enters untapped if we control a forest, so that's not a huge drawback, and then can also activate to make our next spell uncounterable, so that can be vital against blue control strategies to make our Rupture and Monument uncounterable to close out the game. Otherwise, a couple basics, of course, to find with our Shared Roots, as well as plenty of other mana fixing with shock lands, also enable enabling the Verge lands nicely. Once Lorwyn releases, we can also potentially add Overgrown Tomb to the list, so then we might have to adjust the numbers slightly, but I think the overall ratio of Shock lands to Verge lands is going to remain the same. So for now, let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand is maybe lacking some cheaper removal, but I'll try. Can duress on 2, stock up on 3, take it from there. Opponent on the white aura deck. Okay. So, cover up is going to be effective. There's a chance your opponent can present lethal before I get a chance to cast it, although now with Shared Roots I can already play it on turn 4. And I can also maybe fire off a duress in the meantime. For now, an attack for 2. And the Aerialist, which we can mostly ignore since we're not going to try and target it. So, this hand's interesting. I think I still Shared Roots, then next turn I can stock up and duress, so that's a bit more efficient. Although the argument for a duress now is that they might have some ethereal armor in hand that I would prefer to take before they get a chance to cast it, since that could deal a lot of damage. But with a stock up I can also ensure line 5 for cover up. And while they can give their creatures wards or hexproof, they're not going to make them indestructible. So not the most damage so far. Alright, so I think it's safe enough to stock up as opposed to Shared Roots, even though Shared Roots guarantees the mana for cover up. I'll start with the duress. Alright, so their hand is Ethereal Armor, Shelter by Ghosts, and Seam Rip. Ethereal Armor is the scariest since it adds the most power. I'm not going to present any permanents for Sheltered by Ghosts or Seam Rip. So yeah, a few ways we can go about this. Could also just Maelstrom Pulse the Survivor, and then I'm not in a hurry to cast my board wipe since our opponent may suspect one anyways. Then next turn they're likely going Vendor. If they have a mana, pay the 1. And then I can maybe set up my board wipe. It's a close call. Attack for 5 next turn. Could be a little bit more. No, you know what? Let's just stock up. Hit a lands, and then probably the Rupture. Does mean Monument goes bye-bye. Could grab both combo pieces, but then I don't ensure that I get to cast my Sweeper, and then I could fall behind. So I'll grab the Rupture. Also interesting to note, if our opponent plays another Survivor, I could deal with both with a single Maelstrom Pulse, even if one of them maybe has a ward. So they found the mana. And they are overextending into our cover up here. So yeah, once we resolve the cover up, I should be able to contain their remaining threats. This is definitely a better matchup than, let's say, mono-red aggro, where they can top deck burn spells or haste creatures. Since the white deck operates mostly at sorcery speed, my sorcery speed answers are good enough. And we can just outcard them. They're doing a good job of preventing me from collecting evidence with the Survivor, but that's okay. So, Veteran Survivor. Could put Sheltered by Ghosts on it just to protect it a bit better. And Most Helpful Weaver instead. Alright, in that case, I'm happy just casting another board wipe. So our opponent's out of creatures. And now it's just a matter of finding a River Churn Monument at some point. I guess I can shuffle first with a Shared Root, since we know there's a monument at the bottom. Find stock up, cover up. I don't think I want to take 2 just to cast another Shared Roots here. Alright, opponent's got nothing going on. And yeah, that's a swing and a miss. Don't know if shuffling is necessarily worth it when we put some lands at the bottom. Could have just kept Shared Roots in hand, I guess. But we're also not dying anytime soon with 2 more answers in hand. Maybe shouldn't even have bothered playing the Terminus because we know about Seam Rip. I guess we're maybe giving them an incentive to play Sheltered by Ghosts. That's fine. So with the Village, I can also make my next spell uncounterable, which also applies to paying the Ward ability for what it's worth, so I can showcase that interaction. And pass it back. So we're both top decking. Opponent's gonna get rid of the Terminus here. That's fine. Necropsy, another answer. Can also hit enchantments. Another Rupture. So yeah, we've got sweepers for days. Just waiting on some card draw to set up our River Churn Monument. No need to duress. I might fire it off now in case they have a Feather of Flight in hand that they're waiting to cycle. And they had a Shard Mage's Rescue, that's probably more relevant now. But yeah, we're happy with how this game is going, even though there's not much going on. And now Bargain might be able to find it. Cease and desist, and then I guess we'll draw a looting land. So I can start looting. Find another pulse. Good cycle, cease. Also wasn't forced to exile any cards from their graveyard, because we do want to make sure they have more cards in graveyard than they have in library for the monument. But yeah, we're still good. Take my turn. Alright, so the monuments are hiding, but that's okay. Cease, again, don't have to exile anything, can submit 0. Opponent's hanging in there. We know about Ethereal Armor. Necropsy at least is an instance, so can always put that to use. I mean, at this point I could also try and mill them out with Singularity Ruptures for what it's worth. Can try and shoot the Sheriff next. Opponent's going for Ethereal Armor. Sure, I guess I can wait for the Spellbook Vendor trigger. Take it out. Try this first. Alright, there we go. Play and exhaust. And that should do it. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Hand seems functional. A lot of shock lands here, so at least we get to play one tapped. Breeding Pool Gran, so this could be the Kona combo deck. I've seen some builds including Gran as well. So then I would prefer to keep Shoot the Sheriff for Kona itself. So I'm not in a hurry to shoot down Gran. Alright, might be something else with a Bookworm. more of a graveyard deck. Alright, so it is a Sultai graveyard deck. So Cease is going to be helpful. Rupture, definitely a double-edged sword. So this turn I'm probably gonna... Well, I could just Maelstrom Pulse the Bookworm and then keep the instant speed options for later, which I can also combine. Sure. So one of our better tools in the matchup is the cover-up, being able to extract Kavero out of their deck before they can cast it. They won't have many targets for Awaken the Honored Dead, at least. Opponent rebuys the Bookworm. And it's gonna analyze just for a basic land. So no Kavero in the graveyard yet, no Bringer of the Last Gift. Alright, there's a Bringer. And there's a cover-up. So, yeah, this turn could be worth it to shock myself, keep up Shoot the Sheriff and Cease Desist. Plan of maybe shooting Gran, and then if they go for Kavero, we can Cease Bringer and maybe Arden as well. Opponent's gonna go for Kavero, Cease, exile Bringer, and probably Arden, and then they can still choose the Overlord. But at least it's without haste. And now cover-up's enabled, since this is an 8-mana card for collect evidence purposes. And yeah, they milled some more scary cards. Terror, Volgavoth, Quantum Riddler. Start with a cover-up. Get rid of all your Kaveros. But yeah, opponent still has some beefy creatures that we'll have to deal with. So the game's far from over. And there's a Quantum Riddler. So if I were to Necropsy to try and destroy both, that's 10 mana value, which I can do here. So that seems like the play for now. As opposed to a Rupture. It's a nice clean answer. So now it's less scary to go for Singularity Rupture when Kavero's no longer a factor. Another Cease Desist, so let's start with a Stock Up. Find... Could go for another Rupture, I suppose. I don't think we care about Duress in any particular way. So then this turn I could still play Shared Roots, or I can just grab the land as well and then keep up Cease Desist. That might be better. And by not casting Shared Roots, I'm also not shuffling the deck, so I'm more likely to still draw into the Monument. Yeah, if they were to hardcast something like an Arden, at least with Cease, I can exile the creature they target in response. Opponent is going through the graveyard with 7 mana. What are they hardcasting here? Not enough for Bringer of the Last Gift, that's 8. Arden's 8 mana as well. This might be a Collect Evidence. Yeah, analyze with Collect. Exiling mostly cards we don't care about. And grabs a Bringer. Take 2. And then I think we cease exiling the dragon, which can potentially kill us on the spot. As well as probably Valgavoth. Although now that they have Bringer in hand, it's a little sketchier to try and Singularity Rupture and mill half their deck. Because then if they do have the dragon, I could die to it. Another Cease Desist is interesting. I think I keep this one. So I can maybe Rupture and then still Cease afterwards. Opponent discards another Arden. Yeah, I mean, Arden's good too. I've seen builds that only have the 1 terror of the peaks, so if that's the case, we might be safe to Rupture next turn. So I'll get rid of Arden and Quantum Riddler. Another cover-up. Do they have Bringer left in the graveyard? They do not, since it got exiled earlier. So I cannot extract it with a cover-up, which is important. So right now if they go for Bringer, they get back Harvester and Grain, which is not too bad. So I'm tempted to pass and wait for them to maybe go for it. And if they set up their graveyard more, I might find more targets for cover-up to extract. Could have been reasonable just to Maelstrom Pulse a Bookworm, to be fair. Bookworm attacks. And yeah, opponent's not gonna cast a Bringer yet. Just happy chipping in for 2. Alright, in that case, I guess I'll pulse it. Opponent goes for a Bringer now. So now we can extract Bringer with the Deadly Cover-Up, so we don't need to worry about additional copies. And then I can also see if they have any dragons left in the deck for me to worry about. So they have 1 Terror of the Peaks. But yeah, without Bringer to get them all back at once, it's not as much of a concern. So quick peek at their library, Double Overlord, Terror, Valgavoth. Those are the remaining threats. Okay, those seem manageable. So 19 cards remain, now 18. So this can mill essentially 9 cards. And then the second Rupture should keep me alive long enough. Terror hits the graveyard. Opponent's gonna awaken the Honored Dead. And it's just gonna have to destroy itself. Yeah, it doesn't say up to 1 target non-land permanent, so that's pretty awkward. First time I've seen that interaction. So no real need to Rupture now. Alright, I guess I can just back-to-back Singularity Rupture to deal with a 1-mana creature here. So 4 cards left. It is rounded down. Okay, and our opponent found Valgavoth, which I can still remove. So that only milled 1 card. So they've got 2 more draw steps before they die. Is this an Analyze the Pollen? That's not super useful when there's only 1 card left. Alright, last chance to make something happen. Zuko's Conviction brings back a Bookworm, and that's game. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a nice hand. We actually have some early ramp, so cover-up is not going to be too late. Because sometimes a 5-mana board wipe in today's standard is just not going to cut it. Facing Stormchaser's Talent, so it could be Lessons, could be some other blue deck. And then we already have double blue, eventually might need triple blue. Don't see myself needing an extra forest. Because if we want to play Monument and exhaust it, that's triple blue. We already have the Rupture. Accumulate Wisdom. Could be a mono blue lesson deck, in which case they might have some other counter spells as well, which will make things tricky. If it's just a blue-red lesson deck, we have decent answers. Stock up, see if we draw Duress. Find probably just double bargain. So I can at least draw some cards at instant speed. Although I could always main phase 1 to try and hit a 1 or 2 drop we can cast. But it's going to accumulate Wisdom again. So we'll find out soon if they're just missing red mana. No, it does appear to be mono blue. Well, I'm down to cast a cover-up already. Just to deal with their 2 creatures. Even though I don't get to extract anything, that's okay. I guess it would have been nice to get rid of the accumulate wisdoms. Alright, never mind. They are just missing red mana for now. And they found it. Makes me feel a bit better, since if our opponent was on mono blue, things would get kind of tough with all the potential counter spells. Now, I guess I did draw another green, so I can double bargain here. Although I'm also down to just main phase 1. Finding a land and shoot the Sheriff. And then pass with another bargain available. We already have the Rupture, so it's just a matter of finding the River Churn Monument now. Opponent's not applying a ton of pressure. And we can also draw some answers to their artifacts and enchantments. Talent, get back the Accumulates Wisdom, which does now have 3 lessons in the graveyard. Roots would shuffle my deck, and I don't necessarily need to do that. I could already start milling here, to be fair, even if I'm not destroying any creatures in the process. And now Desist also an answer to their artifacts and enchantments. So yeah, let's go for it. Just mill half your deck. Their lessons were enabled anyways. And then we did not mill any monuments, so they still have all 4 in circulation. Accumulate will draw 3, 18 cards left. So they need to get on the board quickly. There's 1 monument. Could blow it up, but it feels like they'll have to play another one soon if they want to get the game over with in time. And then there's a monument. So let's see if I play monument. I cannot quite exhaust it right away. Blue-red usually doesn't have any main deck artifact removal. They could bounce it, of course. Yeah, it might be worth it to run out now. And then, I mean, to be fair, I could also wait for them to play more artifacts and then blow them up, so then I don't want Monument in play, but Monument also just kind of wins me the game. So can't really go wrong. Hadn't played land yet, so could stock up. Finding Duress and maybe a Necropsy. And then sure, I'll just Duress now. And then next turn we can close it out. Opponent just has a bunch of creature removal in hand, can take the monument, which does trigger the one in play, but that's fine. And yeah, this will just end it for us next turn. But if we didn't have the monument yet, again, Desist blows up all their win conditions. So that buys us a ton of time. And we've got enough sweepers to deal with any and all otter tokens. Talent into talent. Trigger monuments. They can technically still do some damage in their upkeep, but since enabling monument involves drawing and discarding, they cannot draw from an empty library without losing the game. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we're safe here. Alright, just play monument, exhaust, and call it a day. Also important to note, sometimes it can be worth it to mill yourself with a monument if it means enabling a necropsy or your cover-up. But in this case it was not required. Opponent's gonna technique Gran, and if they draw with the talent, the game ends. And there we have it, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, hand seems functional. We've got a ramp, plenty of card draw, a sweeper to catch us back up. So then depending on the matchup I may need more removal. Do need to hit some more land drops perhaps. So turn 1 mountain could be a more aggressive deck. Yeah, haste creatures can be problematic since we don't have a ton of instant speed removal. So this is probably not our best matchup. Let's stock up and grab Pulse and a land. Although mono red has fallen off pretty hard in recent sets, especially since the bannings of Screaming Nemesis, and before that Monstrous Rage. So it's definitely not as prevalent as it used to be, especially in best of 1. Mono white aggro is by far the more popular version, and that one's definitely a better matchup for us. I do get to wipe the board still, and now Necropsy can be an instant speed answer as well. Can't collect evidence, otherwise I would extract some of their haste creatures out of the deck. So our best chance might be to just quickly assemble our mill combo. For now, another challenger. Full bore to pump it up. So yeah, this is a lot of damage. Could be that to a fling effect. We're at 4. Kick Burst Lightning's game as well. So, cannot play both Necropsy and Pulse. So, this turn, I think I just Pulse and then keep up Rakshasa's Bargain for appearances. Land 5. Slick shots. So, doesn't take much here for that to be lethal. I'll take the 1. Could be that to a lightning strike now too. Opponent might wait for me to tap out. I do have some instant speed life gain with Cease Desist. So technically, if I don't tap out and I draw into Cease Desist, I could still survive the lightning strike. But that's a bit of a stretch. And I feel like I'm gonna have to tap out at some point here. So, if they have it, they have it. Yep. Alright, so if my next draw step happened to be Cease Desist, then I could have maybe survived it, but yeah. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Got the monument in hand already. Usually not a card we want to draw early on, but maybe depending on the matchup we can run it out early. Against black-green they could have some ways to remove it once it's in play, so I'm not in a hurry to run it out. Just gonna wait to play an exhaust once we cast our first Rupture. But yeah, 2 creature lands are also kind of problematic since we have very few instant speed answers. For now, Grab the shared routes and the looting land. And now Glimpse, their opponent's also ramping. Another cover-up. So there's not a whole lot going on in the early turns. Gonna wait to play this in case they have a way to destroy it. A 2-color deck could have some Field of Ruin type effects. I guess nowadays it's Demolition Field in Standard. Ancient Vendetta. Okay, that was unexpected. We'll see if they know what to name here. Consult is not in my deck. But now for the next Vendetta, they will know exactly what to name. Unless I can cover up, get rid of the Vendetta first. They might also have some duresses to take the monument, but I feel like if I play it, they might have their own Maelstrom Pulse. So, still not enough to collect evidence here. I guess we play this, and then no real reason to main phase activate. So if they have another Vendetta, they can still cast it. Opponents are gonna shared routes instead. So our decks may share some similarities. And another Glimpse. So not sure yet what I'm supposed to discard. We'll see what we draw. I think the Terminus can go. And now I can cover up with Collect Evidence. Just to get rid of their Ancient Vendetta, which is kind of scary here, not gonna lie. And then once we see their deck, we'll have a better idea what they're trying to do. Alright, so they are trying to extract cards out of my deck. The End is not going to find any targets. Rise of Sozin, once it reaches Chapter 2, can. So that's a reason to hang on to Maelstrom Pulse. Get rid of those Vendettas. Virtue we don't care about. More Rises. Opponent also has cover-up, so that's a concern. Since that can also extract cards that end up in my graveyard first. Phyrexian Arena for card draw. Graveyard Hate. Bunch of ramp. And then, yeah, Demolition Field. As well as Basing Say, so they're mostly winning with their lands or just by slowly milling someone out. Alright, only the one Maelstrom Pulse, I believe. So I could play the Monument right now, before they can maybe snipe it. Sure. And our opponent scoops it up. Alright, I guess I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand, I think. Don't have any ramp, but some early interaction, some card draw. So hopefully we don't get a run over. Start by having a look. Alright, a white life gain deck this time. Take the Sheltered by Ghosts. So mostly worried about finding a sweeper in a timely fashion. Don't think I'll need to shoot the Sheriff right away. Answering something like a Pridemate. That's what Shoot the Sheriff is for in this matchup. The 1-drops we should be able to clean up with our board wipes. Okay, so I could pass and then either bargain or Shoot the Sheriff if really necessary, but I imagine we'll just bargain. Opponent's still gonna slam down Linden. That's a better target for Shoot the Sheriff, but they don't have any creatures that grow when they gain life, so I don't really care about it. And I would rather dig a bit deeper to find one of the aforementioned board wipes. Alright, cover up, and then probably just grab the land at this point, since ramping is not super helpful. I mean, I guess I could still Shoot the Sheriff and shared routes and then be guaranteed mana for cover-up. That's not awful. And now I can save myself the damage. But yeah, I mean, there's not much our opponent can do to stop the sweeper next turn. So I could also just save myself the 2 damage, play this tapped. Even if they play a Pride Mate, sure, it's going to get big, but it's not going to hit me right away. So their best case would have been to play 4th land and the ley line, which would have pumped the team, and then would not have died to the cover-up, but yeah, opponent's going all out here, hoping for the best. Turns out we did find the sweeper. And these +1 counters are also going to go to waste. And then, what do we extract? I think the Essence Channeler is scariest. Opponent's got another Sheltered by Ghosts in hand. And then, yeah, they've got the Ley Lines, the Exemplars, pretty good too, the Pride Mates, and that's about it. So, a very winnable matchup. Again, any aggressive creature decks without haste creatures or burn spells we're happy to face. So we'll start with a stock up, find stock up and cover up. And then, yeah, again, there's no real reason to pass and keep up my instants in this case. I'm still tempted to grab the shock land just so I can play it tapped and feel a little bit better as opposed to keeping my mana unspent. But I guess I'll still grab the Verge. So there's a Pride Mate, that could potentially threaten to do some damage, but we found the Rupture as well. So sure, let's just start here, and then I just need to find my Monument to close it out. Yeah, for opponent slam down a Ley Line with 4 mana. It's possible I would have died, since that's +8 damage in that spot, I believe. Exemplar is a type of card we want to remove, but I'm not in a hurry to do so. And also nothing I need to extract. Find another Rupture, Shared Roots. So if I were to bargain, find Monument, I can still play and exhaust, so that's worth a shot. Alright, bargain and Agnakella. So then now I do want to deal with the Exemplar. Can extract it with a cover-up as well. And our opponent's gonna throw in the towel. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. And what do we think of our hand? No green, but I can cycle Cease. Bargain and stock up I can still cast without green mana, so should be alright. Starting town. So is it a graveyard deck? It is black-white, perhaps. Find a Shared Roots. So I don't really want to cast Cease until there's some targets in the graveyard, ideally. Which may happen this turn cycle already. So our opponent's a Raise the Past deck. So that's the card we would love to take with a cover-up. But it's going to be tricky to have one end up in the graveyard unless we take it with a Duress. Infestation Sage. Yeah, if they mill another creature, I'll cast Cease. Alright, fine. Find my green. Although I do not have a forest yet, so it doesn't actually count yet. Alright, now with Watery Grave I can enable the Verge next turn. So I suppose I could play this now. Cast stock up, and then next turn maybe play this tapped. And then Rupture is a card we eventually want. Yeah, I guess the Sweeper's still fine, although I potentially die if I cast it and our opponent follows it up with a Raise the Past. So we do have to be careful. Enduring Innocence can maybe stick around, so that one's more annoying to deal with. I would have preferred it if our opponent cast Sephiroth. So, yeah, interesting spot. Could just play a tap land and then cast Bargain at instant speeds, and then untap, cast Cover-Up. Opponent will still get some 1/1s and drop the Enduring Innocence. What's the alternative? Cast Shared Roots and then go up the chain and immediately cast Singularity Rupture. But that could be bad again if they have the Raise the Past, which I haven't been able to check for. So I think I gotta be patient here. Find a Duress before we Rupture. Could also maybe Duress before I Cover Up, and then Cover Up can extract the Raise the Past as well. Otherwise I'm not taking too much damage so far. Opponent at max speed already. And now Zealot has a sack outlet. So now Sephiroth becomes a lot more threatening. Alright, find probably Cease and another bargain. And then I don't think I can wait any longer. But now I can exile the Zealot at least. Opponent can sack some things in response, especially the Gorehound and the Enduring Innocence, which don't leave any tokens behind. So get rid of your Zealots. Opponent does have a Day of Judgment in hand. And then of course Raise the Past, Sephiroth, Enduring Innocence, Voice, Blood Witch, Servondame. Okay, and then also can't forget about the Encampment in hand. Opponent gets some more 1/1s. And we could see them activate the Encampment here. Just to draw more with the Innocence. So, yeah, could try and Rupture, hope they didn't draw into Raise the Past in the meantime. I guess I could Desist and then blow up Innocence and the Servo token, and then they're just left with Insect, but they can't draw. Yeah, I guess that's okay too for now. They could still hit me for 3, but it's not the fastest clock. Ooh, Blood Witch, that one's scary now with the encampment. So now am I just dead? I'm gonna take 3 for 5, 6, 7. So it's very close. And I found a Duress. Okay, so I can check for Raise the Past. Turns out they have Sephiroth and Servondame, so Sephiroth can also drain me. But I have to Rupture here. And then hope to find a monument as soon as possible. I milled 2 copies of Raise the Past, 3 copies, so they're not likely to draw the 4th. Opponent's gonna hang on to Sephiroth. Next turn with Encampment, I could be dead. So I can Rupture again, or I can Bargain. But if I Bargain, I'm not gonna have the mana to do much else besides maybe cast a spot removal spell. If I find an instant speed removal spell for Von Dam, that would be decent, because then they cannot make the tokens of Encampments. So it's actually an interesting choice here. Rupture is just the safest play, but it also doesn't necessarily progress my plan in any meaningful way. But I guess I'll play it safe for now. Opponent is also close to decking, 10 cards left. Got the last Raise the Past. But I could die to this Sephiroth if they combine it with another Blood Witch, perhaps. Voice of Victory, if that attacks with Sephiroth in play, I die. So I need to wipe the board once again. Now I can also Shared Roots at least, to get a bit more mana going. So these are all forced. So 5 cards left. And wow, opponent scoops it up. Did they do the math and figure out they didn't have any creatures left, perhaps? In that case, yeah, I guess we can potentially deal with Sephiroth and just win. Still felt a little bit premature, but not gonna complain. If Bargain finds Monuments, I would be able to play and activate after getting an extra land of shared routes, so we were potentially close to winning the game as well. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Still need to find a second black source. I can get swamped with shared routes, but then I'll need one more for the cover-up. Opponent on what seems to be a white aggro deck. White-black. Okay, grab my swamp. This could be the skeleton deck, which could actually be a tough matchup, especially with the haste. But for now, I think we just want more card draw. Shoot the Sheriff could also be decent. But when I have two sweepers, I think we're just trying to dig for Monument as quickly as possible. Yeah, case. So their hand must have a lot of removal. And now Duress can maybe snipe something relevant as well. So let me stock up. Do still need a second black source here, so could just grab another shared route, or I could grab a Watery Grave and then maybe shoot the Sheriff. Or I can keep digging with Bargain. Sure. The rest have a look. And yeah, it's just a bunch of removal. They are playing the build I featured recently with Corpses and Caretaker's Talent, so Corpses is definitely the most threatening card here. Okay. So next turn we could Singularity Rupture, deal with the cases, or at least skeletons. Case is solved, so next turn they can fetch a land up. Although I could also blow them up with Desist, which I don't particularly hate here. Could also cover up, get rid of the... what's it called? Corpses of the Lost. Although they only have 2 left in the deck. So options aplenty. I think I will just Desist for now. Get rid of double Demonic Tutor. Opponent did find land 3. Can play Talent. And now, not gonna be interested in playing Terminus when they can Seam Rip it. Can just Bargain, and then we're looking for Monuments. Find another Bargain and a land. And I can Bargain again at instant speed, unless I just want to cover up again to extract the Corpses of the Lost, which is still a way I can maybe lose. But I feel like with double Bargain I'm pretty close to finding the Monument here. Can also activate my land for what it's worth. But this digs a little bit deeper. There's Monuments. Could even make it uncounterable, but that's not a concern in this matchup. So yeah, just play Exhausts. Necropsy is pretty good in the matchup since it can deal with creatures and enchantments at the same time. But yeah, opponent was a little slow out of the gates and also happened to keep a hand full of removal spells. And that's one of the advantages of this control style of deck, with very few targets for their Seam Rips and Sheltered by Ghosts. Also the reason why we only have the one Terminus, since it's a lot less reliable than Shared Routes. But yeah, either way, this Sultai deck has pretty reasonable matchups against any of the white aggro decks. The Skeleton deck being kind of the exception, since that one can attack from a different angle with haste, so that one can be a little trickier. Red aggro is a bad matchup. The artifact deck, which I was hoping to showcase, we did not run into, but that's also, I think, a very winnable matchup with 4 main deck copies of Cease Desist, which can blow up all artifacts, as well as Maelstrom Pulse, which can maybe clear all copies of Synthesizer on the battlefield, as well as more sweepers to maybe extract Synthesizer out of the deck with a cover-up. So that should be a winnable matchup, but of course there's still games where the opponent's going to curve out beautifully, and you maybe don't have the right answers at the right time and still get run over by a Fire Crystal, for instance, giving the team haste. So that's certainly something that could still come up. And the same is true for some of the white aggro decks, of course. Sometimes they do have a fast start on the play, you never get to 5 mana to cast your sweeper, and you still get run over. But for the most part, I've been enjoying this deck in the current best of 1 ladder. The lesson deck also quite winnable with those main deck answers to artifacts and enchantments. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.